Night settles over the ruins, wrapping the ancient stones in a cold, breathless silence. A long forgotten street stretches through the darkness, homes still standing. Pottery left beside doorways, a half-finished meal resting on a stone table as if abandoned only minutes ago. Wind moves through an empty marketplace, stirring dust over tools that once shaped a thriving city. No signs of struggle, no traces of escape, only the unsettling sense that thousands of lives simply dissolved into the air. Deep beneath the surface, a team of archaeologists descends into a sealed chamber untouched for centuries. Their lights cut through layers of darkness, revealing walls etched with symbols that do not belong to any known culture. The ground carries strange marks, burned, fractured, melted, as if exposed to a force that arrived suddenly and vanished just as quickly. In the center of the chamber lies an object encased in hardened sediment. Its form distorted by time, it radiates an eerie, inexplicable presence, as though it remembers what happened even when history does not. Above ground, the abandoned city waits, silent, perfect, and impossible. A civilization thriving one day, and gone the next. What kind of power could erase an entire society without leaving a single trace? Centuries before its disappearance, the city emerged in a fertile basin surrounded by low mountains and winding rivers. Seasonal floods enriched the soil, allowing crops to flourish across wide terraces carved into the hillsides. Warm winds from the south carried moisture inland, creating a climate ideal for settlement. Traders from distant regions once passed through its gates, guided by the glimmer of stone towers rising above the surrounding plains. Every traveler described the same impression, a place alive with craftsmanship, order, and quiet ambition. Stone roads connected neighborhoods built with remarkable precision. Blocks of limestone fit so tightly together that not even a blade could slide between them. Water channels ran beneath the streets, directing fresh water from the river into public baths, workshops, and gardens. At the heart of the city stood an open plaza paved with polished slabs that reflected sunlight like a mirror. Markets filled the square each morning, voices haggling, children running between stalls, artisans shaping bronze, pottery, and colored glass. Temples lined the eastern ridge, their entrances aligned with the rising sun during equinox and solstice. Priests recorded astronomical patterns on clay tablets, tracking the movement of stars with striking accuracy. These records hinted at a society deeply attuned to natural rhythms, where religion, science, and daily life blended into one continuous system of meaning. Murals inside the temples depicted scenes of celebration, harvest, and rituals that suggested a culture confident in its stability. Politically, the civilization appeared organized around a central council. Excavated tablets referenced leaders chosen for wisdom rather than lineage, a structure that kept internal conflict minimal. There were no defensive walls around the city, only ceremonial gates, implying that threats from neighboring cultures were limited or non-existent. Peace, prosperity, and geographical advantage allowed the population to grow steadily, reaching tens of thousands at its peak. Yet beneath the serenity of its surface lay subtle tensions. Soil layers from the surrounding hills show signs of slow environmental shifts, irregular rainfall, sudden dry seasons, and minor tremors recorded in temple inscriptions. These early indications, barely noticeable to the citizens of the time, hinted that the land was gradually changing. Still, nothing in the geological or cultural record suggested a catastrophe large enough to drain an entire city overnight. The world of this civilization was stable, predictable, built on foundations that seemed unshakable. As centuries passed, its architecture became more refined, its agricultural systems more efficient, and its influence spread farther across the region. By every measure known to archaeologists, this society should have continued to flourish for generations. Nothing about its environment, politics, or technology hinted at the possibility of sudden extinction. And yet, at some unknown hour, everything stopped. Long before the city reached its height, the region was nothing more than a cluster of modest settlements scattered along the riverbanks. Early inhabitants lived in reed-woven shelters, drawing water from shallow streams and hunting small game across the valley. Their world was simple, shaped by the cycle of seasons and the quiet rhythm of the land. Yet something set these early communities apart. a shared instinct for craftsmanship and an extraordinary ability to organize. Archaeological layers reveal how the first settlers gradually mastered stone shaping, at a time when surrounding cultures still worked primarily with wood and clay. These people carved massive slabs from nearby quarries and transported them using sleds lined with river mud. Over generations, the technique evolved. Carvings became more intricate, blocks more precise, and tools more refined. What began as basic shelters slowly transformed into structures of geometric clarity, suggesting a growing vision, a belief that permanence could be engineered into the landscape itself. Origins of their spiritual beliefs also took shape during this early period. Stone altars from the oldest strata contained symbols linked to celestial patterns, spirals, intersecting lines, and stylized stars. These markings match astronomical alignments found in later temples, indicating that the civilization's fascination with the sky was not an invention of prosperity but a legacy carried from its earliest ancestors. Their myths told of cycles repeating endlessly, of forces beneath the earth and lights above it guiding human destiny. Such beliefs became the invisible framework that shaped their future choices, their rituals, and eventually their identity. Family structures were communal rather than patriarchal. Children were raised collectively, and elders were treated as living archives of memory. Knowledge passed orally from one generation to the next: how to shape the soil for crops, how to predict seasonal rains, how to read the faint tremors beneath the ground. These lessons, refined across centuries, gave the early society an unusual resilience and confidence. They learned not just to survive but to foresee, adapt, and plan. As population increased, separate settlements began merging, driven by shared trade routes and mutual reliance. Farmers exchanged grain with metalworkers, hunters with potters, priests with astronomers. The merging of these villages was gradual but deliberate, guided by a council of elders chosen for clarity of judgment rather than lineage. This decision-making structure became the seed of the political model that defined the later city. The moment the civilization truly emerged came when a migrating group from the northern highlands joined the valley inhabitants. They brought new agricultural techniques, new artistic styles, and a form of early script that would evolve into the writing found on temple tablets. This cultural fusion ignited a period of accelerated growth. Architecture soared in complexity, irrigation expanded, and the merging of mythologies enriched their understanding of the world. What had once been isolated settlements became a unified identity, a people who believed they had mastered both earth and sky. From these beginnings, the city rose. Every stone in its walls carried echoes of ancient instincts: to observe, to build, to preserve, to endure. Nothing in its formative years hinted that it would someday fall not through conflict or decline, but through a disappearance so complete that history itself would struggle to comprehend it. The first signs of disruption appeared quietly, almost imperceptibly, woven into the rhythm of daily life. Workers constructing a new district along the river abandoned their tools mid-task. Chisels lay beside unfinished carvings, baskets of stone fragments remained untouched. As if a signal, heard or sensed, passed through the city in a single breath. Traders who once crowded the plaza reported unusual delays along the outer routes. Caravans arrived half-empty, their drivers unsettled by a strange heaviness in the air surrounding the valley. Nothing overtly dangerous occurred, yet conversations described a tension that no one could name. Something beneath the surface had changed. Deeper beneath the city, seismic traces began to emerge. Layers of sediment inside the water channels darkened unexpectedly, containing minerals typically released only by shifts in subterranean pressure. When modern researchers later examined these deposits, they identified microscopic fractures in the stone, fractures caused not by violent quakes, but by a type of controlled, pulsing movement rarely seen in stable regions. At the time, citizens interpreted the faint tremors as natural fluctuations, no different from what their ancestors had endured. Still, inscriptions on several temple tablets from this period record moments when the ground softened, when walls breathed, and when torches flickered without wind. The warnings were subtle, but they mounted. The city's priests, trained to observe celestial and terrestrial disturbances, noticed irregularities as well. Star maps created during this era reveal slight deviations in the night sky, patterns that appeared to shift against their expected paths. This phenomenon, recorded with meticulous accuracy, deeply unsettled the temple scholars. To them, the heavens had always been a constant, the guide for rituals and harvests. Any distortion meant imbalance. Their discussions grew urgent, and for the first time in generations, the council convened to interpret signs they could not fully understand. The second major event came unexpectedly from below. While excavating a foundation for a new observatory, workers uncovered a layer of earth unlike anything seen before, compact, metallic, and fused together as if subjected to extreme heat. Embedded within this layer were fragments of a substance that neither crumbled nor scratched. Its surface shimmered under sunlight, reflecting a dull spectrum that shifted like oil on water. Confusion spread among the craftsmen, and the excavation was halted. When the priests inspected the strange material, they declared it a remnant of an ancient force, something predating their oldest myths. Fear circulated quietly among the workers who witnessed it. Stories whispered of an old warning: when the ground reveals what should remain hidden, leave it in darkness. Then came the third event, the one historians consider the final turning point. A series of carvings appeared overnight on the walls near the Eastern District. Unlike the refined artistry of the city's craftsmen, these markings were crude, almost frantic. They depicted figures fleeing from a descending cloud, their bodies contorted, their mouths open in silent terror. At the cloud's center was a distinct spiral symbol, one that did not match any known language or ritual iconography of the civilization. The carvings were rough, carved with speed, suggesting urgency rather than art. No one claimed responsibility. No musician, mason, or scribe recognized the patterns. For the first time, the city sensed the presence of something outside its understanding. Within weeks, daily life began to fracture. Markets emptied earlier, workshops closed without explanation, and the normally crowded riverbanks grew quiet. A pervasive unease settled across the population. Tablets from this era record a phrase repeated by multiple scribes: "The breath of the earth has changed." Priests attempted ceremonies to restore balance, but testimonies suggest their rituals ended abruptly, torches extinguished mid-prayer, echoes vibrating across temple walls before fading into an unnatural stillness. The final event unfolded swiftly. Evidence suggests that citizens made coordinated attempts to gather and relocate. Paths leading out of the city contained scattered belongings, tools, woven cloth, fragmented pottery, indicating movements interrupted. But the trail ends abruptly outside the valley, where possessions lie abandoned without the presence of bodies or remains. Those who left never reached neighboring settlements. Those who stayed left no trace at all. Weeks later, an eerie silence engulfed the entire region. Buildings stood intact, meals remained half-prepared, fires burned down to ash. Everything suggested a sudden, simultaneous withdrawal of life, yet nothing revealed where the people had gone or what force compelled them to vanish. The rising tension had escalated into a single moment of irreversible consequence. The civilization had stepped into the threshold of disappearance, leaving behind only the echoes of a rising dread that no record could fully explain. Deep beneath the abandoned city, the sealed chamber waited in absolute darkness. Centuries of untouched stillness wrapped around its walls like a second skin. When the archaeologists finally broke through the last layer of compacted stone, the sound echoed through the underground passages, a low, resonant crack that seemed almost reluctant to be heard. Dust rose in a slow, shimmering cloud as the chamber exhaled its first breath in 1,000 years. Lights sliced into the void, beams swept across the floor, revealing a surface glazed with a glass-like sheen, as if the ground had been melted and then frozen mid-flow. The air felt heavier than it should, thick with a metallic scent that clung to the throat. No insects, no movement, no sound, only silence so dense it pressed against the skin. The walls came into view next, covered in symbols unlike the precise carvings found in temples above. These were jagged, fragmented, burned into the stone rather than etched. Dark streaks radiated outward from their edges, hinting at intense heat or force. In the center of the chamber, circular grooves spread across the floor like ripples frozen in time, each forming perfect concentric rings. At their core lay the object encased in hardened sediment. The sediment shell cracked as gloved hands exposed its surface. A muted shimmer pulsed across the artifact, not reflective, but alive, absorbing light and releasing it in faint vibrations. Its shape remained indistinct, neither geometric nor organic, as if it resisted definition. Instruments detected no known metal, mineral, or composite. It belonged to nothing that could be traced to the civilization above, or any civilization known. Suddenly, one of the lights flickered, then another. The chamber dimmed, not because the equipment failed, but because the darkness itself thickened. A low hum groaned through the stone, deep enough to be felt in the ribs. Dust trembled on the floor. The concentric rings began to vibrate, not physically, but visually, blurring at the edges, warping as though space around them shifted. Every surface seemed to inhale. A gust of cold air rushed from the far corner of the chamber. It carried a faint whispering sound, not vocal yet unmistakably deliberate. The artifact responded with a faint glow, its pulse growing faster, rhythmically aligned with the tremors faintly echoing beneath the earth. For a moment, the chamber seemed to replay something ancient, a memory burned into stone. Light flared. A violent jolt shot through the floor. The glass-like surface beneath them fractured in branching veins that raced toward the walls. Dust erupted from the ceiling in a silent shower. Sensors screamed with readings that matched no natural seismic activity, wave patterns spiking in impossible intervals. Frequencies rising in perfect mathematical precision, as though following a design rather than chaos. Then the vision surfaced. Figures, etched onto the walls, seemed to move under the shifting light. The burned symbols aligned into recognizable forms, silhouettes fleeing from a spiraling cloud. The same motif discovered above ground. But here, the spiral was not carved. It glowed, faint but unmistakable, as if reacting to the artifact itself. For a second, the chamber felt alive with the remnants of whatever force had once passed through it. Heat shimmered in the air. The metallic scent sharpened. The walls vibrated with the memory of a moment that had erased thousands of lives in a single breath. And then, just as suddenly, everything fell still. The glow vanished. The hum died. The chamber returned to dead silence. Light steadied. Dust settled. The artifact lay motionless, cold, indistinguishable from any inert stone. But the evidence was undeniable. A force, precise, rapid, overwhelming, had erupted here long ago. Something powerful enough to melt stone, distort matter, and disrupt the world above without leaving bodies or ruins. A force that had awakened for a single moment and then disappeared as completely as the civilization itself. In the days that followed the discovery of the chamber, the data gathered from the site began to reshape modern understanding of the vanished civilization. The readings taken during the artifact's brief activation defied every established model of natural phenomena. Wave signatures resembled neither earthquakes nor volcanic tremors. Instead, they displayed patterns consistent with rapid, synchronized oscillations, behavior seen only in controlled environments, never in nature. Scientists attempting to analyze the data found themselves confronted with an anomaly that mirrored no known geological or atmospheric process. Attention turned to the strange mineral layer discovered beneath the city. Samples revealed that the fused soil contained compounds formed only under extreme heat, temperatures far beyond what any ancient society could produce. Yet the layer showed no evidence of fire or combustion. No charcoal, no soot, no organic residue. It was as if heat had materialized from the earth itself, radiating upward in an instant, powerful enough to alter the very composition of the soil but leaving buildings and artifacts untouched. Several theories emerged. The first pointed to subterranean gases, pockets of lethal compounds that might have burst upward in a sudden, silent wave. Yet this could not explain the concentric fractures or the melted mineral patterns. The second theory suggested a localized seismic resonance event, a type of deep earth vibration capable of stunning or disorienting living beings. But no recorded resonance in geological history matched the precision found in the chamber's wave signatures. A third theory, the most unsettling, proposed a rapid biological agent, something so swift and overwhelming that life ceased before bodies could fall. However, no trace of pathogens, spores, or toxins was found within the city's boundaries. Every test returned sterile results. as though the valley itself had been cleansed by an unknown force. The artifact posed the greatest mystery of all. After the initial surge, it remained inert, unaffected by attempts to measure, scan, or analyze it. Its composition refused to reveal structure, its surface resisted every tool. Even under magnification, it appeared both smooth and undefined, as though it existed slightly outside the material rules governing everything around it. The idea emerged, quietly, cautiously, that the object was not a product of the civilization, but a remnant of something far older, something the city had unknowingly built upon or awakened. As research continued, a pattern began to form. The last days of the civilization aligned with the earliest disturbances, tremors, odd markings, disruptions in celestial observations. Evidence pointed not toward an external attack or gradual decline, but toward a singular moment, a brief breach in the balance of the world. The kind that leaves no bodies, no ruins, only silence. Above ground, the empty streets remained frozen in their final gestures, meals unfinished, fires extinguished, tools abandoned mid-stroke. Nothing indicated struggle, nothing showed panic, only the abrupt cessation of life, as if an invisible curtain had fallen between one breath and the next. The valley grew quiet again. The chamber was resealed. The artifact remained where it had been found, untouched, unmoved, indifferent to every question directed at it. And the city, once vibrant and full of order, returned to its ancient stillness, waiting, as it had for centuries, for the next attempt to understand what force had erased its people without leaving a trace. Centuries after the city's disappearance, its silent remnants continue to challenge the boundaries of human understanding. The structures that survive, still upright, still precise, serve as a reminder of a society confident in its permanence. Unaware that its final moment would come without warning, scholars walk the abandoned plazas and feel the weight of absence, not decay. The civilization did not fall slowly, it simply ceased, leaving only the architecture of a life interrupted. The artifact, sealed once more beneath layers of stone, remains the most enduring enigma. It has become a symbol of limits, of how little is truly known about the forces shaping the ancient world. Every analysis, every theory, every attempt to categorize it only deepens the mystery. Some view it as a relic of deep earth phenomena beyond current science. Others see it as a fragment of something older than the city itself. None can dismiss the possibility that the civilization encountered a force it could neither predict nor withstand. What lingers today is not just the question of how the people vanished, but what their disappearance reveals about the fragility of even the most advanced societies. Beneath stability, beneath prosperity, beneath the illusion of control, lies a truth shared across all civilizations: permanence is never guaranteed. If an entire culture could vanish between one moment and the next, without disaster, war, or warning, then the deeper question remains: could such a silence ever return, somewhere else, in another age, in a world that believes itself immune to the mysteries that shape the past?